Hey there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. We all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. This isn't Andy. Andy Kahn's out. Introduce yourself, Sydney.
I'm Sydney, but I think that we should stop saying that because I've been on so much this year
Right.
that maybe I'm the real co-host.
Right. Andy sets it for you.
Exactly.
Right, yes.
Exactly. We need to get this straight.
Definitely.
But anyway, I'm Sydney. I'm the director of the Safe Community Institute at Crime Stoppers.
Andy went to, where did he go? He told me.
He went on vacation.
Montana. Yeah, it sounded
He
really
thinks
cool.
that he can leave us.
Right.
I don't think that's very
On
nice.
some sort of reservation or something.
I know.
It
He's
sounded
like
a
going to
good
see
time.
animals and
Yeah, and be in cool weather.
imagine that.
Yeah, that would be nice. One of the things that we want to do is sort of update you on what has happened during the legislative session. And we've talked a lot about that because we were hoping that a lot of different bills regarding bonds, regarding public safety would be passed and would become law. Sydney is going to go over where the status of some of those.
I think we should start with the most timely one. But if I tell you about this, you have to stay on the live. You can only go watch.
That's
I'm going
right.
to tell you after this live, okay?
Because this is going on now, apparently,
So,
right at this moment.
At 3 p.m., stay here. The governor will be signing into law SB 224, which is the catalytic converter bill, as everyone has been calling it. And it basically increases the punishment for engaging in theft of a catalytic converter. So that's happening now. You can go watch as soon as this is over.
That's right. And you'll recall there was a Harris County Sheriff's deputy who was killed allegedly or at the hands of a man who was allegedly trying to steal his catalytic converter. The deputy's widow was going to be, I think, at the signing when Governor Abbott signs the bill. Keep in mind, everything has to pretty much, things can be passed by both the House and the Senate, but before it becomes law, it has to have the governor's signature. And that one, does that go into effect immediately, not September 1st, or do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, most of them
go September 1st.
Yeah, right. September 1st is the day that all of the ones that he signs into law, that's the date that they become law.
Yeah. So one that became law immediately, though, is SB 435, which in my brain, I have to categorize these because there's so many numbers. So for me, it's the victims bill. But basically, this bill allows victims of violent crime or their family members to see footage basically ahead of trial so that they can be prepared and not be so shocked.
This had a lot to do with what happened in Santa Fe.
Yeah. So the victims' families of the Santa Fe shooting here pushed really hard for this bill.
Right.
But something that I think is really important to keep in mind about this bill is that it's not only for Santa Fe or for school shootings. It's for all violent crimes. So that's a huge win for victims and for their healing process.
Well, and you look at Santa Fe, for example, because the gunman has been deemed incompetent to stand trial, nothing has happened. I mean, that was in what, 2017, right? 5 years have passed, and there are parents that they don't know any of the specifics as far as how their child died. And the reason for that is because you've got this pending trial, but who knows when the trial will start. So at least these parents, they'll at least learn some information that they don't know now and that they've been wanting to know for many years.
And that bill was an interesting one to watch all the happenings of, because at one point in the session, it looked like it was going to completely die. And then all of a sudden it came back in full force. And, there was a lot of support for this bill. So that's a huge win when it comes to public safety and it comes to victims, which is a lot of what we focus on. So now let's talk about some of the bills that are on the governor's desk but have not been signed yet.
And again, when you say that, they've been passed by both.
By the House and the Senate, and now the governor can either sign them or veto them.
And wouldn't you agree that in these cases, his signature is expected? I mean, it would kind of be a surprise if he didn't sign, or what do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I think anytime that a bill gets to the governor's desk, people are a little surprised when a veto happens, but it does happen relatively frequently. So I think it's something you have to be prepared for.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but on the last session, there was the tethering.
Yes, the tethering for animals.
Yeah, where, if you were going to chain your dog or rope your dog up, there were certain laws that went into effect. And the governor initially was like, no, we don't need that. And there were a lot of animal advocates that reached out, and he changed his mind.
Yeah. And so that's great. So SB 402, which, if you can remember, I think it was in mid-January, we held a press conference with Senator Whitmire and DA Ogg to kind of announce this legislation, and it would prioritize murder and capital murder cases. So again, that's been passed by the House. It's been passed by the Senate. There was, I think, only 5 legislators that opposed in both chambers.
Everybody seemed to be for that, and rightfully so, because you hear so many people that they don't like the thought of someone who's accused of murder or capital murder being out on bond, but that they have the constitutional right to have bond. Those trials should take precedence.
And at that press conference, it was announced that as of January 1, there's, I think, 1,834 murder or capital murder cases pending in Harris County.
Yeah.
That's a lot. We have cases that are 5 and 6 years old.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that happen with that. First of all, it becomes harder to prosecute an aging case because evidence goes stale, witnesses die or flee or don't cooperate anymore.
People's memories fade.
So then that brings us to kind of our issue at hand, which is people that have died allegedly to those who are out on PR bond, multiple felony bond, and bond forfeiture.
Keep in mind, if you haven't been watching along the way, we've been doing this for more than 2 years, definitely for more than 2 years. And it basically, we started with, because there were people in Harris County residents who were being murdered, allegedly at the hands of someone that was free on a repeat violent offender, free from jail on multiple felony bonds.
Right.
And Andy was really good about, when he would take a look at those and compile those, he had very stringent, you had to be out on more than one bond.
Yeah, it's not just one felony bond. It's more than one. So
multiple.
That would be at least 2, right?
Yes. And for violent offenses.
Yes. PR bond or in bond forfeiture. Those are our 3 criteria for that. But I do have good news.
Yes,
I do have good news. So our list now of, again, people who are allegedly killed by those on that criteria.
Right.
Our list is 187 plus people, but we've seen a 52.6% decrease from the amount of people killed by that criterion.
That's great.
From 2021 to 2022. And then this year we've seen just a handful of people. So we're going even further down. And that's, I would argue, because everyone is doing their job and addressing this issue.
Yes. I mean, for a while, I think it became sort of this us against judges, which that's never what it was. But I think judges are paying a lot more attention, and they're seeing what can happen. They're setting bonds higher. We've really seen a lot of
bonds revoked.
Yes.
Yeah. We've seen no PR bonds or less PR bonds, even for things that don't necessarily fall into SB6.
Right.
So speaking of SB6, let's talk about the constitutional amendment and about SB 1318. So
but it's been 187
for a while.
Yeah. Because that number is
right. Yes.
That's the last number I have.
Yes. Yeah. It has been. And there for a while, I mean, we would, I would get with Andy once a week to do this.
And it would be.
There would be weeks where there would be more than one.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it really started jumping. And, I'm not taking any kind of credit for anything, but I do believe that focusing on it and making people aware,
raising awareness,
this Fox 26 has done, Crime Stoppers has done. I mean, I think when you make people aware of a troubling situation like that, people take notice. And I think law enforcement has taken notice, judges have taken notice, and it's a good thing.
So one of the key pieces of legislation that came out in a public safety realm from our previous session was SB 6, and that basically made it not admissible or not allowable for judges to give PR bonds for certain violent offenses.
Right.
So in this session, there was a bill filed SB 1318, which amended that list to include felon in possession of a weapon
Right.
to that list on SB 6. So people charged with felon in possession of a weapon would no longer be eligible for a PR bond.
And what's the status of that?
So unfortunately, it kind of just died.
Went nowhere, yeah.
It went through the Senate, passed in the Senate, passed in the House committee, and then it just didn't receive a vote
Right.
in the House. So that bill in our constitutional amendment, which is SJR 44, so these two have not been completely voted down. They just haven't been voted on
Right.
yet.
And that, it's not unusual, right?
Right,
For that
it's not unusual.
You're talking about all hundreds, right?
I mean, there's so much
Hundreds
to
and
be
hundreds
done.
of bills. And yeah, I mean, lawmakers are doing a lot in a specific period of time. And if you don't have a big push on something,
Right.
it can just kind of flounder and it goes away.
I mean, even if you have, these are your 6 top priority things.
Right.
I mean, there's just only so much
You
time.
can do, yeah.
So that in SJR 44, which is the constitutional amendment, the constitutional amendment would make it possible for a judge to not give a bond for certain offenses.
Right. We would
If-
change the Constitution.
If the Texas voters voted that
Right.
into play.
And that's the thing that I've always liked about it, because it's up to the people.
Right. So if this were to pass all the way through, then it would simply be added to our ballot.
Right.
And then all of us could decide, do we want to change the Constitution to give judges the ability to not give a bond for things other than capital murder, basically?
And now you're hoping that, or Crime Stoppers is hoping that could be
So we
part
sent
of the special session.
Right. So we sent a letter to the governor. So our 88th regular session is done. It's finished. We are currently in our first round of special sessions.
Right.
And the governor can add as many special sessions as he likes. So if he says, hey, we just didn't make it through as many bills as we hoped to in this session, or there's still issues that I'd like to address, he can call a special session and add whatever he wants
Right.
to the list.
And it's his call, right? I
Right,
mean,
it's his call.
the governor is the one that makes that decision to what's going to be part of a special session, how many special sessions, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we wrote a letter to the governor asking for SB 1318, which is that felon in possession of a weapon bill, and SJR 44, which is that constitutional amendment, be added to a future special session so that it can make it all the way through the legislative process. Because honestly, we want to see what comes of it. We want that bill or those bills to have time to make it through.
Right. And, we've done a lot of breaking bond segments about that issue, where you have someone that they're charged with felon in possession of a weapon, which, why do they have a weapon? I mean, it's sort of not a good idea. And they get a PR, get out of jail free card. And we have found several instances where they've gone on to commit
Right.
other crimes.
Right. So we'll see. We sent a press release out that includes the letter that we sent to the governor. So if you want to read it and see what we have to say about it,
Yeah.
you can do that at our website, crime-stoppers.org.
Something else that we're going to talk about is the situation on Bissonnet. For people that don't really know what that's all about, explain that for us.
So Bissonnet is the area, or one of the hotspots in the Houston area for prostitution and purchasing prostitution.
And anytime
it's
you have
been-
that going on, you're going to have
Other kinds of
human smuggling and other
Right.
kinds of crimes.
other kinds of crimes and danger, other
Yeah.
kinds of danger. So there's been a big push to figure out what to do about this specific area, because it's been well known for a long time that
Notorious.
this is the place for it.
Yeah.
So they're now blockading. Law enforcement is now blockading the hotspot area on Bissonnet to make it harder for people to get through, to potentially purchase sex in those areas.
So you'd have to kind of have a valid reason for being there to get through.
Right. So you can't just easily drive through and,
Yeah.
or you pick up someone to purchase sex from.
Right.
And now the argument is that you'd have to go really far around. So kind of in line with that, we were asked to look at some data to see how many purchasing prostitution cases or offenses have been reported since September of 2021. Now, in September of 2021, House Bill 1540 went into effect, which makes solicitation of prostitution a state jail felony.
Right.
So it's a harsh, harsh punishment. We're the first in the nation to have that level of punishment for that. So,
And that's a maximum of 2 years in a state jail.
yes. So we looked at how many of these cases have happened overall in Houston. And really, we looked at reports from HPD. We found that there have been 825 offenses reported by HPD in all of Houston for purchasing prostitution or solicitation of prostitution. Everywhere.
Okay.
And then in solely the Bissonnet area. So let me give you, because I'm a data nerd.
Okay.
Let me give you my parameters for that.
I like numbers too.
So we looked at the Bissonnet corridor between the Beltway and 59.
Right.
And then we did a quarter-mile radius in all directions from there. And what we found is that there have been 347 offenses reported. So about half of our offenses for the entire city
In that one area.
have been reported in that one area.
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of cool graphs, and I'm very proud of them. And if you want to see them, you can definitely email me. But we're looking at this, and our next mission is to look at selling prostitution. So just prostitution in general, selling sex, so that we can see kind of what's happening there and how this blockade could potentially change this over time. So we're looking at this, and we're looking at, are these cases proceeding all the way through the court system, and are they getting prosecuted, or are they getting dropped? Are they getting dismissed? Are they getting reduced to a misdemeanor? Let's
talk about that for a second. Because some people are going to make the argument by, you're not really, instead of getting rid of it, you're just spreading it to other areas, and then you're not really sure what's going on, right?
Right. So we'll see. Only time will tell.
Right.
But in my logical brain, I would think, yeah, this is going to get dispersed into all different parts of our city. One of the major corridors that we're seeing this happen right now is on South 45 going south.
Right.
We're starting to see a large congregation of those there. There's one specific point kind of south between 610 and the Beltway that had like 107 offenses last year. So I'll be very interested to see.
And they are. They're. I can see where traditionally they would be. They could be difficult cases to prosecute, because I think anytime you have this sort of undercover thing going on,
of course,
it gets a little gray. Because I mean, okay, theoretically, someone could drive down the street and see a pretty woman and pull over and say, "Hey, you want to go out on a date?" That's not illegal. That would not be a crime.
There has to be
Hey, you want
exchange of money or goods. There has to be that exchange and proof of that exchange.
And I'm sure there's some in the judicial system that they just don't like the thought of the government sort of trying to trick people, right? I mean, you'll have people that will make the argument, why are you using resources for that instead of, why don't you go out and find the people that are really doing it instead of doing this whole pretend thing? And I think that most people, if you had the charge and you had a good attorney, you probably wouldn't be convicted.
And I wish that I had for you in this moment, but we're doing it right now. I don't have the exact numbers for how these cases are disposed. I have no idea. Like, I have an idea, but I don't have the specifics on that. We're taking a look on it, but I do know that the blockade came from the fact that law enforcement has said that they keep arresting and nothing's happening. So they're trying to find different approaches.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe it will work. Hopefully it will work.
Yeah.
If they are displaced, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Right. And sadly, when you talk about a crime like prostitution, people do it over the internet. I mean, there's websites and whatever that. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that there are going to be people that they're going to commit certain crimes no matter what you do. And if they get caught, they're going to find a way around it to try something else to do.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's all a pending situation. It will
Right.
be very interesting to see what comes of that and to see, you know, how this legislation that was in last session, HB 1540,
Yes.
has affected our cases
Right.
since 2021.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
Cindy, thank you so much for
Yeah.
giving us all this
Of
good
course,
information.
of
And
course.
hey, be sure to tune in to tonight's Breaking Bond. We're going to take a look at a defendant who could be coming to your home and fixing your air conditioner,
This
charged
case.
with sexual assault and stalking. Would that concern you, especially a female? Wouldn't you want to know that that's the case? Again, not convicted, but just facing those kind of charges coming into your house and fixing your air conditioner.
At night.
Yes. All hours of the day and night. Hey, thank you so much for watching this live stream. We appreciate it. Be kind to yourself and everyone else. Bye.